There's so many men out there that need to have real conversations. And most of the pain that we experience in life is because we suffer in silence. We suffer alone. We don't talk about what's going on. How often in our lives do we hold things and we don't let people know that we need help? We don't let people know that we need their support or whatever that might be. This is what makes We Are the They so powerful. We have these conversations. We get together. We really get vulnerable with each other. We talk about the real shit that's going on in our lives. And too often we don't. You're most lovable when you're vulnerable, authentic, and in integrity. And so even as you're listening to this first podcast, you might be thinking, this guy's really being pretty honest. One of the problems we have is if we're being fake or we're not being honest about who we are, and we feel like, well, if they knew who I really was, they wouldn't love me. And this is one of the biggest problems that men face because they think they're unlovable. And the truth is once they actually share what they've done or what's happened, they can trust the love they're getting. What's up, fellas? This is Jimmy Rex. This is the first ever episode of Real Men, Real Conversations. And I've been wanting to do this for a while. I have the Jimmy Rex show that's been going now for, almost 7 years, about 430 episodes in. And I've done about 30 real estate episodes as well. I just put them all on the same platform on my Jimmy Rex show thread. And I thought I'd start weaving these in maybe once a week, every other week, just conversations that need to be had. And what I've realized as I've started this men's coaching program, We Are the They, that there's so many men out there that need to have real conversations. And most of the pain that we experience in life is because we suffer in silence. We suffer alone. We don't talk about what's going on. And I'm going to start this off actually with a little experience that happened to me on Saturday night. What happened is I had a dinner date set up. I was actually really excited to go on this and get to know this person some more. And about 2 hours before, I happened to be with two of my close buddies, Steve Merrill and Travis Prince. We were out at a comedy show, the John Chris comedy show, which is hilarious, by the way. He was telling a joke about when he was a kid, he was super Christian. His parents raised him super Christian. Now they're like older, and as grandparents, they're not very strict, but they were like super strict when he was a kid. And he was like talking about how his parents didn't even let him watch Ghostbusters, but then the Ghostbusters came out a couple years ago where they were all progressive, like women and things like that. And his parents put something up on their Facebook. It was like, we stand with the original Ghostbusters. And he's like, oh, now we stand with the original Ghostbusters, huh? Anyways, total sidetrack. I'll do that a lot on this podcast, but it was interesting because after I got the text, I kind of felt stupid because I'd kind of talked to both of them. I was like, yeah, dude, I'm super excited to get to know this person some more. She's just an amazing human. And so then I had to tell them, right? And part of me didn't want to say anything after she canceled. She sent me a text, like I said, and I didn't really want to say anything because I kind of felt stupid. I felt dumb. I'd already been excited. They were kind of excited for me, although, they've heard this many times from me. But this one was like, no, I was like legitimately pretty excited. And but I was like, you know what? No, screw it. These are two of my best friends. And so I just told them. And both of them were just like, well, let's go grab some dinner, bro. And so we went to dinner instead and ended up hanging out. I have a condo downtown in Salt Lake City now. Went over there and just chilled and hung out for hours and talked about everything. And I found out, one of my buddies had been struggling with this and my other buddy's been struggling with that. And I talked about a couple of things I'd been frustrated with work and investing and some different things. And we ended up having one of the best conversations we've ever had. And I started thinking, if I hadn't been a little bit vulnerable, like I felt dumb, I felt stupid. I didn't want to tell them what had happened. But if I hadn't spoke up and just kind of shared my feelings and talked about it and my disappointment, then I probably would have gone home, been bummed out, not done anything with my night, maybe called some random girl just to try to make myself feel better is what I probably would have done in the past. And all these different things. And it would have just been a negative effect. It would have been, I would have been sad about the experience. I would have been sad that I got, canceled on the dinner. And instead had this beautiful night. And it wasn't lost on me that it was the vulnerability that I shared that caused that to be able to happen. And so how often in our lives do we hold things and we don't let people know that we need help? We don't let people know that we need their support or whatever that might be. And about 3-4 weeks ago, I had a similar experience. So I have a couple close friends from high school, my buddy Nick, my buddy Ben, my buddy Cameron. And these guys are just like brothers to me. We've been best friends since we were 12 years old. And one of them, my buddy Ben, his sister had passed away. And my buddy Cameron, he's a big guy at Google, VP over there for a while and did a lot of things there. And when they laid off 10,000 people, he was one of the ones that got laid off. I mean, he's a guy that's just crushed his career, and all of a sudden he's trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And Nick's been dealing with some personal things, he's raising kids and some different things like that as well. And Cameron had said, hey guys, I could use a weekend together. I need your help with some ideas and things just to figure out what I'm going to do next. And, everybody realized as we started piecing this together, we all needed each other. So we all went to Sedona. And the second night we were there, we all just sat there from like 5 o'clock till literally 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And we just talked. Everybody expressed what they were going through. Nick talked about this situation in his life that's been causing him some real heartache and stress. And, Ben got super emotional, and he's kind of a bear of a man. He's like 6'2", 260, and he's kind of the guy that holds the space for everybody. He's like a tree trunk. And we got him to open up, and, not a single one of us wasn't crying at some point in this night. And, we were able to challenge each other in the best ways, talk about, different things like, hey, here's something that you're not doing that I think maybe you should be, and be able to talk to each other that way. And it was just a real conversation. And this has been playing in my mind. These two experiences all weekend were playing in my mind. I said, enough's enough. Like, this is what makes Weird That They so powerful. We have these conversations. We get together. We really get vulnerable with each other. We talk about the real shit that's going on in our lives. And too often we don't. And so many men are afraid to do this. So many women are afraid to do this. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why this is such an important thing to be vulnerable. The 3 pillars of my entire program are vulnerable, authentic, and in integrity. And I kind of stole those from my life coach, Melissa. So several years ago, kind of a similar situation. I was dating a woman actually at this point, and it was, in my mind, it was going great. This probably, it was before Trump won president. So this is probably 8 years ago maybe. And I thought it was going great. I actually had stopped seeing another person to see this person because I thought she was going to be somebody worth pursuing and putting this attention and time into. And it was funny because every week I have this call with my coach, Melissa, and we would talk about different things. But a lot of the times we would be talking about whoever I was seeing, whoever I was dating, just whatever was on my mind around these conversations. She was really good at helping me figure out, different things to do, or how I could make their day better, how I could make them, comfortable, or whatever like it was. And I remember we'd had this one call, and like half the call, we discussed this person that I'd been kind of seeing had gone off to Thailand, and she had she was doing like a service project over there for I think 3 weeks. And every morning we would get on and we'd FaceTime each other. And then one morning I just woke up, and by the way, I just had my conversation with Melissa, some things I could send her in Thailand to kind of help her have a good time over there, just make her happy, whatever. And a couple days later, we get on the FaceTime call, and it's like, I think it was like 6 in the morning in Utah, 5 in the morning, because that was nighttime over there. And this girl, she just basically says, just so you know, like, I'm not really that interested. I just like, having you as a friend. And I had missed it completely. It was pretty devastating to me, if I'm being honest. And like I said, back then, I didn't always handle things so well when things went wrong. And so I went out that night, ended up hooking up with 2 different women. And not good, not proud of it or whatever else. But at the same time, I was beating myself up hard over this. So I got to get on this call with Melissa, right? And I got to talk to her about what just happened. And I'm used to going into the Bishop where you just get the hammer thrown at you, or, I remember, previous times being told that I couldn't, in the church I grew up in, you can't take the sacrament for a year. You can't talk in church. That one happened to me one time, or just different things. For 4 weeks, you're not allowed to, whatever, And so I'm expecting to get the hammer thrown. I remember one time my bishop told me, he said, God will not be mocked. Yeah. And so I'm expecting something like that to kind of happen. And I tell Melissa, and I wasn't going to tell her. I was like, I felt stupid. I felt dumb. I didn't want to have the conversation. But I said, I'm paying her enough money. I might as well be honest. Like, I've never even met this woman in person. Like, who cares? Just talk to her about it. And so I opened up and I told her the whole experience, what this girl had said, what I'd done in reaction, how I'd handled it. And I remember, and Melissa, she's like, I think she started crying, and she's like, I'm so sorry that you went through that. And I'm so sad that happened to you. And I wish I was there to hug you. And I was like, but what I did, she's like, well, it's not ideal, but let's ask you a couple of questions. She's like, well, were the other women, did they get what they wanted out of it? I said, well, yeah. And then she said, well, were you smart about it? I said, yeah. I was like, are they expecting any more of you? I was like, probably not. It was just kind of, more some party girls. And she says, well, quit beating yourself up over it then. Like, you didn't do anything like that's worth shaming yourself. And it was the first time in my life that I didn't feel shame over something I did that was less than ideal, right? And I remember that feeling, and it kind of changed me that day. And it was because I'd been vulnerable, I had this breakthrough, and I realized, like, I don't need to feel shame. I'm not a terrible person. I'm not this horrible person that's I've made myself out to be because of this wiring that I have about my beliefs around some of these things. And really started me down a path of self-healing that's been going every day since. And Melissa had told me around that same time, she said, Jimmy, she said, you're most lovable when you're vulnerable, authentic, and in integrity. And so even as you're listening to this first podcast, you might be thinking, this guy's really being pretty honest here. And the reason why is because I'm not afraid to let people know, like, things don't always go well in my life. Like, I've been in the dating scene for over 20 years trying to figure this thing out. And I've gone through different paths. I've gone through different times of this. I've gone through different ways of this. And ultimately, it's been the struggle of my life, if I'm being honest. But the beauty of that is that it allows me to have the life that I've had. And what I mean by that is, I thought I was the problem. Well, we all are the problem, but I was convinced that I was the problem for all these years, right? And so what I did is I was obsessed with trying to become the better version of myself. I was trying to fix that I was the problem. And so I'd go to every seminar, every conference, every mastermind, every coaching program. I'd read hundreds and hundreds of books, literally 400 or 500 self-development books. And I was trying to improve myself all the time. And because of that work, because of what I've done, it's led me to the place where I am today, where I get to lead and help all these other men that are going through similar or, semi-similar experiences in life where things just aren't going the way they want them to. And so my pain has brought this purpose, and it's become the purpose of my life. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful purpose that I now get to live. And I was on a podcast the other day. It's one that I just put out. If you guys, it's a couple episodes before this one, with a lady named Forbes Riley. And towards the end of that podcast, I shared a story. In fact, I'm going to cut it in here and you guys can listen to it real quick so you don't have to go back and listen to the other podcast. But this was, I was kind of explaining to her that, the beautiful part about my life, the beautiful part about this path, like, I don't know why this was my path. I don't know why this is the way things went for me. But ultimately, it's led me to this beautiful place where I get to have these experiences. And so it just kind of validates every decision, everything you've done in the past, all of the things that you wondered, are my best years behind me? Did I screw it up? Did I go down the wrong path? Should have I done this? Should have I done that? But I have these perfect little moments in my life where I get to help these other men that are going through this extreme pain. And that's what I want to do. That's my mission now that I'm so passionate about. And it's why I love having a men's coaching group. It's why I love having these experiences and why I've poured so much into it. So I'll cut that in real quick and then come right back. Last night, just to kind of give you some context of something that happened that was really special. So I have my men's coaching group. I coach about 300 men right now, and we're about to go to 2,000. And it's just the most incredible time to be able to work with these men. But I do an exercise after a full day of first we had these military guys come in and we went through a POW camp. I mean, they went through hell. We had this amazing experience. I waterboarded them. They got thrown in a river with a bag on their head and their hands zip tied. I mean, some crazy stuff. But then we bring it all together and it comes full circle. And these guys have these breakthroughs of a lifetime. And then we had these speakers, literally guys in the National Hall of Fame speaker, and then one of the top speakers in the country come in and just poured into us. And then we get up as a group and we start doing share time where we talk about this whole weekend, the breath work, the meditations we did, all of it, right? And we started at 8 o'clock. We usually go about an hour, but I had this feeling, and I didn't plan anything else. I had a feeling we needed to keep doing it. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, everyone just keeps getting up, person after person, and we're pouring into them. And then we had this idea to love bomb anyone that wasn't there, and we sent all 50 guys in the room, sent the 4 guys that weren't there an individual text, sharing love to them and just helping them and whatever they're going on with their world. Then at 1 a.m, a guy gets up, and I get emotional, but after all of this, and the reason I'm sharing this story is because part of what you said when you were talking to me, and I know this, and it's a beautiful part of my whole journey, is the gift of my life is that because for whatever reason it's been this path, I am able to do these things and help these men with these things. But this guy gets up and he shares that he's mumbling kind of like I am right now. And he's like, these words have never come out of my mouth, but I was sexually assaulted as a kid. And he's never shared it with anyone, his wife, his family, nobody. And he said, I just know that the healing starts tonight because I'm finally willing to talk about it. And that was one of 10 really special moments last night. Mm. And those are the life change moments. And so all of this has so much purpose. And it's why, I have so much honor and love for my path and everything that's got me to here, because I know it's because of all that I get to do this. I get to have those perfect moments like last night. And for everything that was hard and everything that went wrong, all of it is so damn perfect because last night was perfect. And that's why I'm just have gratitude for it all. All right, so welcome back. So I wanted to cut that in just so you can give it an idea, because a lot of times I think when we're going through hard things, we think we're alone. We think they're the only ones going through it. We think there's no purpose behind it. And I'm here to tell you that there is. And when we're vulnerable, like Melissa said, it's when we're the most lovable. And so it's hard not to fall in love. Brené Brown says it's hard not to love anybody when you get to know them close enough. When you move in far enough, it's really hard not to love somebody. I'll tell you a story. I got a buddy. He's, and I won't give names on everybody here, just the ones that I know are okay with it. But a couple of years ago, by the way, this buddy is so put together. He's like a model. He's one of the best looking people in town. Like literally the other day, one of my friends was playing this stupid game and they were like asking everybody there, hey, of our group of friends or the people that we would know, who do you think is the best looking person out of all of them? And one of the girls, who's a model, said this guy. I mean, this dude is legit as good looking as they come. His life is as good as you can hope for. He's got a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, and great job, just crushing in every way. Amazing home. Like he's got the best friend in the world. No. But we were having a night together a couple of years ago, and there was a couple of their friends there, and he said, hey, can I pull you guys into this other room for a second? And there was about 15 people in the room. He pulled 3 or 4 of us in, and he said, hey, it was when he was first about to be a dad. And he said, I got to be honest, I'm pretty nervous about this. I don't think I'm qualified to be a dad. I don't feel worthy. I'm afraid I'm not going to be a good dad. And I said to him, I was like, wow, man, like, thank you for being vulnerable with that. And he started kind of getting pretty emotional. He said, one of the things that I need, and you don't know this, but he said, I really need to be validated. I would love if you'd give me, just say something. Like words of affirmation is my number one love language. He's like, well, you just say something. And all of us just poured into him for like 10 minutes, telling him how amazing he is, because he is. And I got to be honest, like it was so vulnerable, and I can't even believe he did it. I bet he woke up the next day like, I can't believe I did that. But I've never loved that dude more than I did that day. It was such a beautiful conversation. It was so honest and raw and emotional. And he is the best dad. He's amazing. But we forget that sometimes we need to hear that, right? I read somewhere the other day, there was a thing popped up on my Twitter that said 67% of comments given or received are to or from women. Men receive a third of the compliments that a woman does, and they give a third of the compliments that a woman does. I started thinking like, man, like men, we need to be better at telling each other that, what makes us amazing. And with my coaching program, one of the first things I do when these men join is the first weekend we get together, I make what's called a badass list. And I just did it again with this next gen program. We brought these younger kids in, 13 to 17. I had them do it too. We called it their awesome list, right? But basically what you do with this awesome list or badass list is I had everybody write down everything they've ever done that makes them amazing. Everything you've ever done that makes you a badass. And we take 20, 30 minutes on it. And then I say, hey guys, this is the safest room you're ever going to be in. And what you're going to do is each guy gets up, he's going to read his entire list, and then all the other people are going to jump on him and celebrate him, like just celebrate like we just won the World Series. And we do this with each person. And there's not a dry eye in the room by the time you're done. People don't even know why they're crying. It's because they're being seen for the first time. Like they're able to actually tell people how amazing they are. And it's such a taboo thing for some reason to be able to just talk about the fact that, you're amazing or you're successful or whatever that might be. It's the reason why it's so powerful. And I first thought of this, I was hanging out with some friends a couple of years ago, and one of the guys, he just kept talking down on himself. And we were just laying there, 3 or 4 friends on a bed, and he was kind of standing on the end of the bed. And I said, dude, what are you talking about? You're a freaking legend, bro. And I started telling him a few of the things that make him amazing. I said, you know what? This is going to be an opportunity. This is going to be the safest room you've ever been in. You've probably never done this. I want you to just brag the shit out of yourself for the next 5 minutes. I want you to just go off as if you have been waiting to share this your entire life and just tell us everything about you that's amazing. It was really hard for him to do, right? But I saw how we light up when we were able to do this and how we just cheered him on. We're like, yes, keep going. And that's where I got the idea for this entire exercise. But as I've done that exercise more and more, what we do with that list then is it becomes your badass list. And anytime you feel like an imposter, anytime you feel like you're less than, anytime you feel like you're not good enough, you pull out your badass list and you just read through it. My friend Jen is actually who taught me this. And what she said is you read the list back as if you're reading it about somebody else. And that's the powerful part about it. Because when you hear of other people's accomplishments, you're like, wow, that person's amazing. I'd like to get to know him. I remember when I read my list for the first time, I was like, wow, I want to hang out with this guy. This guy's amazing. And it's really cool. You get to kind of get that insight. And so one of the things that I want to be able to do is we're having these real conversations. That's another thing. Like, pour into people. Ed Milet talks about this. I hired him back in December to be my one-on-one coach. And the very first time I met him, we're sitting at his house. And within about 4 hours, he points at me and he starts telling me things about me that are true, that I know are true, that I don't think anybody's ever told me before. And I got it immediately. I'm like, this is why this guy is so amazing. Like, he made me feel like he just saw me like nobody had ever seen me before. And I'm like, man, this dude like has a superpower. And then he explained it. I started pressing him about this, and he said, yeah, I call it pouring into people. He said, just tell people why they're amazing. I was at Erwin McManus. He's the pastor of the Mosaic Church. He wrote the book, The Genius of Jesus, The Way of the Warrior, one of my closest humans in my life at this moment. I just love this man so much. I'm in his mastermind. We're close friends. When I was out at his house, there's about a dozen of us there, and he looked right at me, and he just started pouring into me at one point for about a minute straight in front of these other 11 amazing men. I mean, a couple guys there were literally billionaires. One guy there had 8 New York Times bestsellers. I mean, this is an incredible group of humans that was sitting there, and he's just pouring into me. And I just loved it. If I'm being honest, it felt so good to have somebody say those things about me. So one of the things that, again, is you're listening to this, like, who in your life needs to hear how amazing you are? How often are you telling your kids the things you love about them? Or are you just harping on them? Or are you just nagging them, right? Your wife, your girlfriend, whoever it might be, your best buddies. People need to hear how amazing they are. And it's a reminder for me, even as I'm doing this right now, I'm like, names are popping up in my head that I'm going to call right after this podcast is over. So that's one of the other parts that I wanted to do with this podcast. And by the way, I'm just going to go through every single week, and I'm going to share knowledge that I have, things that I've learned from people like Erwin and Ed, stuff I've learned from podcasts, stuff I've learned from these masterminds I go to, stuff that has just come to me, right? I've had a lot of experiences in life. One of the beautiful things about not being married till you're into your 40s is you do get to meet a lot of people. You get to experience a lot of different types of people, both in the single world, in the married world, all these different people that I have in my life, and I get to learn from every single day. I was talking to my buddies the other night on Saturday when we were hanging out at my condo, and I said, I think we take for granted just how amazing like our friends are. Like, normal people, we just don't really appreciate like the fact that we can sit there and learn from each other for 4 or 5 hours in a night. I learned so many things in just a 5-hour period sitting with those two. I was like, God, who has the opportunity to do that? Who has the opportunity to just sit with these kind of humans on a regular basis and learn? And it's one of the reasons why I try to always get proximity to amazing people. I've taught networking and all that. I mean, I'll do some shows just specifically about that. But there's this thing called proximity, right? And what I do is anytime I'm inspired by somebody, anytime that I really want to get to know somebody because I love what they're doing or who they are or whatever, I'll just find a way to be in their world. I'll find a way to be around them. And if I can get that proximity, I know I can learn from them. I can grow from them. And so that's why, with We Are the They, I just came from a meeting. We're filming a video about a guy named Rob, and I'll put it out on my social media soon on my Instagram, which is Mr. Jimmy Rex, by the way. If you're listening to this, give me a follow. I would love to know what topics you'd like to learn about. So send me a DM. Let me know any subjects or any tough conversations that need to be had. I would love to approach them. This podcast is not going to hold back. We're going to talk about tough subjects. We're going to talk about tough concepts, and we're going to really dive into whatever it is my audience wants to learn. And so, but anyway, we're making this video, and he was talking about this trip we did to Iceland, and he'd been in and out of drug rehab his whole life. He was able to quit a few times because something happened. He either got arrested or he got, something bad had happened. And he said, dude, when I went to Iceland with you guys, and he's in our tribe group, by the way. We have our leadership group, which is the group that meets in person every 3 months. And we have the tribe group, which gets together twice a year at the annual events. And he's in the tribe group, and he said, dude, just going on that trip and being around those guys, being in their proximity, he said, I was so inspired. he said that I gave up marijuana. I haven't smoked it again since. It's now, June? And so we're talking about half a year now. And he said, for the first time in my life, I've been able to be present at all my family events. I used to go on vacation and my wife would get so frustrated because I would just be in la la land. I'd be high the whole time and she would have to handle that. He's got 5 kids. And he said, we just got back from St. George. It's probably the best vacation we've ever had. He goes, there's Christmases and vacations, Jimmy, I don't even remember going on. And he said that started in Iceland. I guess I'd challenged, I don't remember doing this, but he said that I mentioned to him because I think somebody asked about weed or something like that. And I said, can I be honest with you guys? Like, I'm going to challenge you to have enough integrity to be in the moment where you're at and not need a substance to change it for you, right? Luke Wren came and spoke to my men's group about a month ago. He's one of the top speakers in the world. He hosts the Life and Wealth Mastery for Tony Robbins out in Fiji. He's the one that runs the whole program. And Luke came and spoke to our group up in Heber City, and he said the same thing. He said that he was giving up alcohol because he realized that, we have all these moments where we're celebrating. He's like, why would we want to forget part of that celebration? Why would we want to dumb down the experience of having an amazing experience? And I was like, wow, that's actually really good. And so I've decided a couple weeks ago, giving up alcohol until I hit my target weight, which is 185, which I have not been at in a very long time. No alcohol for me. And I'm making that public statement so that I can hold myself accountable to that. And I just thought that was such a good, I might not ever touch again. I don't know. But the point of it is whether you're drinking alcohol or not, like, why do we want to dummy down these experiences that are our best moments of life? And for him to say that it was because of his circumference, because he was in the presence of these other men that inspired him to not do that anymore, that meant everything to me. That's the entire reason why I wanted to do what we're doing now. So I want to cut back to why it's so important to have real conversations. Like I talk about being vulnerable, authentic, and in integrity. And I'm going to use a couple examples from some guys in my program. One of the problems we have is if we're being fake or we're not being honest about who we are, usually every single guy I've ever met has something they've done, whether it's, they haven't been faithful in a relationship, or they had a pornography issue, or they've cheated in work, or just whatever it might be, right? They lie, whatever. They're not nice to their kids. Everybody has something they've at least done in the past they're not so proud of. And what happens a lot of time is if we haven't been able to talk about it and be able to express these feelings, we feel like we're the only one going through it. And we feel like, well, if they knew who I really was, they wouldn't love me. And this is one of the biggest problems that men face because they think they're unlovable. And the truth is once they actually share what they've done or what's happened, they can trust the love they're getting. And see, I'll give you an example. I had a guy in my group, came to our first event 1.5 years ago, and grew up very religious household here in Utah. And he said when he was a little kid, he was exposed to pornography for the first time. He said, Jimmy, not a day had gone by in my life I haven't looked at pornography. He said, I've never told my wife. I've never told my family. He said, I shame myself every single day. He just absolutely was beating himself up over this addiction. And he told the group, I said, hey, man, I said, would you be willing to talk about it with the group and just share it with some guys that, that this is something? He said, sure. So he did. And he said, I'm going to go home. I'm going to tell my wife and tell my family about it. And what happened, and the reason why he wanted to do that is I had a couple other guys come and share some of their experiences about getting into integrity. One had gone to a strip club and then talked to his wife about it and how that changed energetically their entire relationship. Another one had been molested when he was 4 years old by 2 men. And to prove to himself that he wasn't gay, he basically tried to sleep with everything in town. And he had confessed years earlier to his wife and gotten that straightened out and figured out. I had these 2 men speak to the crew, to our group, and then I spoke about some things in my life. By the time the 3 of us went, and then we shared with each other that we were able to talk about this, and I have them all get in this circle, 50 men. After the 3 of us spoke, I get the 50 men in a circle, and I play this game called Step Into the Circle. And I created this, kind of took parts of it from different things in my life, but I just wanted people to know, I knew that men feel alone all the time. And I said, I want to create an atmosphere where men don't feel like they're alone. So I created this exercise called Step in the Circle. And basically what it is, we all 50 get in the circle, and then I read these questions off. And so the first questions, I start stuff off with if your parents divorced when you were a kid, step in the circle. If you had a brother or sister die in your life, step in the circle. If you ever been beat by one of your parents, step in the circle. And we get a little bit more into it, so if you have a pornography issue, step in the circle. If you've ever cheated on a girlfriend or a spouse, step in the circle. If you've ever been cheated on by a girlfriend or a spouse, if you have cancer, and go through all these questions, right? And almost on every single question, there's several people that step in the circle. You get to two steps in, you look at each other, and you step back out. By the time we're done, again, there's not a dry eye because everybody is being seen for who they are, so they can actually accept the love that they then get going forward after that. And one of the questions that I ask is, I say, do you feel alone often? And 48 of the 50 dudes stepped into the circle, married, single, old, young, rich, poor, it didn't matter. And what I realized with this experiment was that all these men felt like they were the only ones going through this, but they all were dying to be able to share that this is what was going on in the real world. So after we did that exercise, that's when we allowed people to share. And this guy got up and he shared, that he was going to talk to his wife and kids about this problem that he'd had. And long story short, it's been 18 months now, 19 months now, and he hasn't had a single time where he's looked at pornography. And in his world with his wife, that's a very big deal, obviously. And the coolest part was, he said, Jimmy, when I first talked to her, he said, for a couple hours, she didn't want to talk to me. It was pretty bad, about 4 hours. And then she came over and she put her arms around me. She said, thank you for talking to me about this. Thank you for telling me. And I love you. And I'm here to help you, or here to be with you. And, a couple of weeks went by and he said, Jimmy, he said, I got to be honest, man, you told me that was going to energetically change my relationship. I didn't believe you. He said, the thing is, he said, for the first time in my life, I know my wife loves me because she knows everything and she still loves me. And that's the thing. That's what a lot of times these men are going through, and they can't express that. They can't go through that. They can't share any of that. So they don't trust the love. It's like having a bucket with holes in it. So every person that pours into you, all you can think. He told me when we were in our first weekend together, he said, every single birthday of my entire life, every time I've done anything good, every time I've hit a milestone in work or anything, everybody was celebrating me, and all I could think was, if they knew who I really was, they wouldn't love me. He said, I've never been able to enjoy a day of my life being celebrated. And now he does. Now he can all the time. And so it's just a really cool example of why it's so important to get into integrity, right? And by the way, like, so many men are dealing with different things. I mean, on a weekly basis, I coach now about 350 guys. And so I get big issues brought to me quite often, right? I had a guy recently come to me and he said, hey, he hasn't been able to have sex with his wife in a year. They haven't had sex in over a year, right? That dude is dealing with the fact that not only is he not having sex with his wife, but he says, the worst part is that my wife didn't want to have sex with me. That was been a couple months now. And, I talked to him recently and they're absolutely been able to approach the situation. They had a real conversation, but they hadn't talked about it. Like, they just weren't having sex. They hadn't talked about it in over a year. They weren't able to actually just be able to converse with each other about the fact that they weren't having sex as a married couple. I was like, this is insanity. And so, like, we, kind of gave him some ideas. He went and he did it. And now they have a normal sex life again. They've been on some vacations. He told me it's better than ever. And so that was one situation where having that real conversation really changed the game for this guy. Another one that comes to my mind is I had a buddy come to me recently and said, hey, man, I have this new baby and this new son. And he just wasn't connecting. He's like, dude, I just am not connecting to this child. I'm not loving this kid yet. I'm mostly just annoyed by it. It was such a raw, honest thing to say, because everybody just thinks that everybody loves all their kids, right? And we were able to talk about it, and it's been a few months again, and it's going much, much better. I'll say that. He seems to be connecting a lot more. But he's just being able to talk about that, right? And be able to express that. And so, again, this podcast is going to be a little bit raw. It's going to be more raw than you're used to on the Jimmy Rex Show. I hope that this is something that it creates value for you guys. I know that for me personally, I know that every time that I get a little bit more raw, I get a little bit more vulnerable and authentic with people, it's scary. I'm scared even of saying some of these things. I'm like, well, but at the end of the day, I have enough proof now that builds that confidence that every time I've done this, it's helped other people. It's helped enough people in their lives. I had somebody call me, I don't know, it's been a couple of months now, I guess, but he's just bawling on the phone. And he said, dude, I just want to say thank you. He said, you sharing the stuff that you have has given me the confidence and the courage to be able to live my truth. And he's made these huge changes. He said, my relationship was almost over, my marriage. And after I was able to own my truth and really change some things in my life that were very scary for me to do. He said, me and my wife's relationship is better than ever. He said, I just want to say thank you because you going first gave me that courage to be able to do it. And so I know that there's in life, again, there's going to be people that listen to this and just think I'm a crazy person or think I'm stupid. I don't care. There's 300 million people in the United States. If 299 million of them think I'm the worst person ever, that's a million people that can learn and grow from what I'm trying to teach. As I'm trying to build We Are the They, as I'm trying to help more men be able to get into their heart and be able to be honest with themselves, be honest with the people in their lives, I know the effect that has. Last night we had a barbecue at my buddy Kurt's house. He's one of the guys in my program. We had about 20 to 25 of the families from our group too, all just got together. And their kids were all there. They're all playing. And I just sat there and just kind of took it in. Because when I first started this program, and to be honest, I launched it October 2021. And when I first put it up, I had 50 spots that I was going to fill for We Are the They. And I had 147 guys apply for those 50 spots in less than 8 hours. And so I shut it off and I went through all their applications, and then I went on all their Instagrams, I went on their Facebooks, and what I was looking for is I wanted to look at their kids. I wanted to see the people that were going to benefit the most from this. And I went through and I spent 2 days going through every single person's profile. I went through hundreds of photos of a lot of these guys. And it was so cool because I knew that if I could develop something to help these men have somewhere to go to talk about these things, that I would change the lives of all those kids as well. See, my dad was a really good man. And 95% of the time he was the best. But my dad had a lot of hard things happen. His dad died when he was younger. He had some other experiences, and he never had a place where he could go talk about that. I actually recently had a really beautiful conversation with my dad, and I asked him some really hard questions. And I asked him about some things, and asked him about his dad dying. I asked him about some things that happened with his sisters and his family, and and he felt like he let them down because he wasn't there to support them, and some different things. And he got really vulnerable. I talked to him about, he had some infidelity with my mom, and we got real talk. I said, take me back there. What was going on? What was happening at that time? And we had these beautiful conversation for an entire night. My dad really opened up on some things, and it really helped me understand him better, helped me understand his situation better, helped me understand his marriage better, helped me understand my childhood better. It was like a total gift. And part of what I took away from that was that my dad, I asked him, I said, Dad, when was the last time you shared any of this stuff? He said, I've never talked about this with anybody. He'd never talked about it with anyone. He never had a place to go. And I knew when I started We Are the They, I was like, if I could create something that my dad could have gone to and maybe been able to talk through some of these things and maybe been able to share his emotions, things would have been a lot different for me as a kid, right? Those parts that maybe I wish didn't happen or that weren't so pretty would have been a little bit better. One of my guys, recently told me too, he said, Jimmy, I was out and grabbing ice cream with my son, and he just looked at me. He's like 8, 9 years old, and he looked up at me and he said, Dad, I just want to tell you, thank you. You've been so much nicer to me the last few months. And it was basically since he'd started the program. And he's like, dude, this sounds like a small thing, but it's like, that's everything, right? And so for this, with this Real Conversations, Real Men, Real Conversations, what I'm trying to do is help us be able to have a place like my dad needed. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, okay, I'm definitely want more of this, do me a couple favors. Number one, share this. Share this with your friends. Share this with your family. Share this with people that you think could use a little bit more real talk in their life. We also have a Facebook page. It's also called Real Men, Real Conversations. We'll put it in the link below. Make sure you guys check it out. It's free. You don't have to be a member of We Are the They to join that. We're going to be having conversations. That's an open platform for men to talk about whatever they want to. And then additionally, if you are interested in joining We Are the They, the link is in my Instagram. Just go to wattmovement.com. This is what we do. I've kind of talked about some of the things we do, but this is the kind of stuff we're doing. And you might be asking yourself, Jimmy, why are you doing this? Why are you the one that's qualified to do this? And the truth is I don't know if I'm qualified. I'm just the guy doing it, right? I know that I've screwed up a lot. I know you learn a lot from that. I know that I've done a lot of things right as well. I've had a lot of success. I've had a lot of failure. But I know that I love doing this, and I know that I'm committed to doing this. I know that anytime somebody cares and puts the effort in, there's going to be a result that matters. And so that's, I guess, the only thing that I can say is I'm here in the trenches trying to figure this stuff out. But please leave me a comment below. Please leave a review for the Jimmy Rex Show. That's where this podcast is being hosted. If you have never before, it really does matter because it helps me get this message out to more people. And so if you've never done that and you're listening to this, please do. And in the meanwhile, Thank you for listening. This is episode 1. This will be the episode I refer people back to if they ask about Real Men, Real Conversations, so we can get this going and launched. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to do this every week. I think this is important. We'll keep the Jimmy Rex Show going as well. It's my favorite. I love having these conversations with amazing guests, some of the most random people, and just amazing people in every aspect of life. I think there's so much to learn when you have a chance to talk to these incredible human beings that I do on the Jimmy Rex Show. So thank you again, and we will see you next time.